Hello and welcome. Today we're going to make chocolate chip cookies. More importantly, we're making soft chocolate chip cookies. We're going to use a couple tricks to get our desired results and end up with cookies that are not only soft at the start, but actually stay soft for a few days as well. As always, before we get to the ingredients, I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed and has been sharing the videos. It really helps the channel grow and it means the world to me. And to those who haven't already subscribed for more videos just like this one, subscribe. And if you hit the notification bell, YouTube might even tell you when there's a new video out. Or they might not, it seems a little random at times. For our ingredients today, we will need 3/4 of a cup of light or dark brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract or vanillin, it works equally well here, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 large egg, 1 teaspoon of cornstarch, 1/4 of a cup of white sugar, 3/4 of a cup of butter, 2 cups of flour, and 1 to 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. So, as always with any baking, we want to mix our dry ingredients before anything else. So in this case, that's the flour, baking soda, salt, and one of the ingredients to help the softness both last longer and give us a slightly easier time ensuring we don't bake out the moisture. That's the cornstarch. The cornstarch is going to add a little bit of elasticity to the crumb of the cookie, and this is going to trap more moisture in both during the baking and during the storage after they are baked. Both of our sugar types will go in with the wet ingredients since they act a little bit more like wet ingredients in this case. So let's get to the wet ingredients and show you what we need to do. So we need to start by creaming the butter and both the sugars together. For this recipe, since we will be thickening the batter somewhat with the addition of cornstarch to trap a bit more air to our mixture. So there are 2 reasons why we're doing this. The first is the cornstarch will, as I said, thicken the batter more than would be normal, so our bubble structure will be a little bit more micro bubbles and less large bubbles. And we will want as many as possible so that we can have the interior of the cookie remain as soft as possible without being undercooked. This is probably going to be about 3 to 5 minutes of beating it with a wooden spoon or plastic spoon if you have one that's a little bit rough. The reason I'm using a wooden spoon is the roughness helps you add air in faster. Now this may seem like a lot of butter, but instead of having a oil also mixed in, we replaced all the oil with butter to get a deeper taste profile, and once again it also helps us keep our dough moist for longer. Once it starts to loosen up and has started to behave a little bit more like a thick liquid or a paste and it smooths out, you'll notice the color will have faded slightly. Once it's faded a few shades, then we know it's ready, and we just need to add the final wet ingredients, which is the vanilla and the egg. Now we're adding them now instead of at the beginning because it's actually, if we added them at the beginning, it would be more difficult to whip the air in. So by creaming the butter without them first, we get more air in the mixture and we can kind of just gently mix them together in this. And while you're doing that, you're going to add a little bit more air. So you might lose a tiny bit of air, but it's not going to be too bad. Once that's all mixed and is ready to go, we just need to combine the wet and the dry ingredients together. Let's mix them together and get this show on the road. First, we will form a well in the center of the dry ingredients. I'm using a dough whisk here. Typically, these tend to be a bit thicker and sturdier than a regular or a flat whisk. In this case, the strength is not as needed as it would be in a bread or thicker dough, but since it's a flat plane, it is super easy to clean and to clean the mixture out from inside the whisks with just a simple butter knife. Once we have all of our wet and dry mixed in the bowl, we just want to start whisking the ingredients together. Now you may notice that not only is the whisk flat, but it also has rings as well on the business end there. This helps the mixture combine a bit better and adds more air by having the rings basically cut through the dough, and it extrudes sort of 3 separate pieces in different sections. Then when you end up mixing and kneading them all together again, it ends up adding more micro bubbles, helping our final bite feel to be just pillowy soft, even though the outside can be at the point where it's still firm. The brown sugar is also going to bring a ton of moisture and give us a more well-rounded taste. Technically, you could just use all brown sugar, but the results were just okay. The cookies spread out a little bit too much, and the tastes weren't really improved by it. The mix had the better depth of flavor. Now, once it is fully doughy and smooth, we want to add our chocolate chips. I tend to mix these in by hand at this point because it's easy and it helps to get the chips mixed in without overworking the dough and forming gluten, which you might want to do a little of if you like the chewy chocolate chip cookies, but this was meant to be a little bit more soft. Once you are all mixed in with your chips, we just need to go into the refrigerator for about an hour to make sure the dough is nice and cool. We'll get to the reason for wanting it cold while it bakes. Now, once our dough has chilled, we just need a parchment-lined sheet pan and a spoon or portion control device, aka a scoop. For sizing the balls, you can use a teaspoon and just grab a bunch and roll it in your hands, just like I did, just slightly higher than the camera was showing. And you can try and eyeball that and get the sizes all as close as possible, or you can use a portion control device. I'll make a couple with a portion control device to make sure the rest are all roughly the same size, because I do want that for the pictures. If you were in a bakery or a restaurant, you would almost always be measuring everything with portion control devices, so if you're looking for that bakery consistent sizes, you'll want to use one of these things. Or you can end up doing the very tedious and completely unnecessary task of weighing each cookie ball out to ensure they're all the same size. At home, we honestly just need to get them mostly the same size, so winging it with a spoon works just fine, but if you have these other things, they're nice to use. You'll want to handle the dough as little as possible so that it stays as cold as possible before going into the oven. Once those are all ready to go, we want to get our cookies in a preheated 350 degree oven as quickly as possible. This goes in for about 10 to 12 minutes. 11 seemed to pretty much be spot on for my taste personally. Now, the reason we want to be fast here is the cold is the last tool we are going to have to make soft cookies. The cold dough is actually going to take longer to spread out, and only spread and puff just a little bit, but since we're in a ball form, it'll typically end up being smaller around and taller than typical or normal chocolate chip cookies. And even the ones in the prepackaged cookie dough tend to make that flatter cookie. So how does this help us stay soft? Well, since it is not spreading out or puffing up as much, it is going to have less surface area to lose moisture from, so it stays softer longer. So there are three tools: cornstarch to thicken and add elasticity, adding as much air in as possible while we're creaming the sugar, and cooling the dough to minimize the spread, and this is going to get our cookies to be nice and soft. Once you are done with the timer and out of the oven, we want to cool it with a paper towel or a towel covering the cookies, and you want to cool it for about 15 minutes before eating. Once cooled, we are done making cookies. So now that everything is done, we have a nice set of about 24 mini soft chocolate chip cookies. This is kind of a lot of cookies, so just in case you don't want that many, you can freeze half the dough without harming the flavor or texture in a noticeable way. If you were to try to just half the recipe, you would either have to use a half an egg, which is weird, or find small eggs, which honestly I haven't seen in about 20 years, so that's not probably going to work out. So freezing would be your best bet. These should stay fresh about 5 to 8 days in a closed container. I don't think I've ever seen them last longer than that, so I really couldn't say much about anything past that. And with that, I would like to thank you all for watching, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe for more like this. And as always, I hope you have a great day and a great meal.